I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. Welcome to this podcast of the People's Pharmacy.
You can find previous podcasts and more information on a range of health topics at peoplespharmacy.com. Before drug companies and modern pharmaceuticals, doctors embraced plants as medicine. Do they still work? This is the People's Pharmacy with Terry and Joe Graydon.
Our two guests are experts in botanical medicine. They both have family traditions of herbalism as well as their own rigorous research.
We'll learn about some of the most beautiful and useful medicinal herbs and why they still have a place in modern medicine.
Mimi Prunella Hernandez has a new book, The National Geographic Guide to Medicinal Herbs, the world's most effective healing plants. Medical Dr. Tyrone Lodog will join the conversation.
Coming up on the People's Pharmacy, rediscovering the healing power of medicinal herbs.
In the People's Pharmacy health headlines, semaglutide, a drug better known by its brand names Ozempic and Wegovy, is indicated for controlling both blood sugar and excess weight. Now the FDA has approved its use for an additional indication. People with obesity are vulnerable to cardiovascular disease that can lead to heart attacks and strokes. The manufacturer, Novo Nordisk, completed a placebo-controlled trial with more than 17,000 overweight patients. The participants had cardiovascular disease but not diabetes. Over the nearly 3 years of this study, people taking Wegovy were 20% less likely to have heart attacks or strokes or to die from cardiovascular complications. The absolute difference between the two groups was 1.5%, which yields a number needed to treat of 67. In other words, 67 people needed to take semaglutide to protect one person from heart attack, stroke, or cardiovascular death. It's not clear whether the benefits are due primarily to weight loss associated with Wegovy or whether the drug has additional effects that reduce the chance of cardiovascular problems. Quite a few of these volunteers experienced side effects that led them to withdraw from the study. The dropout rate was 16% for those in the Wegovy group compared to 8% for those on placebo.
Long COVID has presented a nearly intractable problem since early in the pandemic. Researchers have not been able to discover the causes of the severe fatigue, post-exertional malaise, brain fog, and shortness of breath associated with this puzzling condition. There's currently no cure. Now, scientists at the University of California, San Francisco report the discovery of COVID-19 viral fragments in blood more than a year after infection. These antigens can be detected in body tissues for more than 2 years after a bout of COVID. People who experienced more severe infections were more likely to have lingering evidence of the virus. This research contradicts the idea that COVID is a short-term illness. More research is necessary to figure out whether viral persistence is responsible for the enduring symptoms of long COVID.
A meta-analysis of 14 randomized controlled trials has revealed that vitamin B complex supplements may reduce the risk of stroke. Among more than 76,000 participants in the trials, vitamin supplements containing modest doses of folic acid, vitamin B12, and vitamin B6 reduced the risk of stroke by 34%. That relative risk reduction held only in areas where foods are not fortified with folic acid, as they mostly are in the U.S. The researchers suggest that in such areas, B vitamin supplements not exceeding 0.8 milligram folic acid and 0.4 milligram vitamin B12 could help.
The Cosmos study has some new data to report. A subcohort of 573 volunteers completed all of the cognitive tests during the years of the study. Those taking multivitamin and mineral supplementation had improved cognition and memory compared to those on placebo. The authors conclude that the benefits of a multivitamin supplement were equivalent to reducing cognitive aging by 2 years.
The health benefits of regular exercise are widely acknowledged. Less well known is how to get people to actually participate in physical activity. A new study tested behavior change strategies in a study of about 300 sedentary older individuals. They were divided into 3 groups who were asked to participate in an exercise program on their own 3 times a week. One group served as a control. Another group was encouraged to set goals as an incentive to move. The third group used peer-to-peer experience sharing. Only the volunteers in the third group increased their activity significantly, as measured by an accelerometer that they wore. And that's the health news from the People's Pharmacy this week.
Welcome to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. 100 years ago, if your great-grandparents went to the drugstore, the medicines they received were almost always compounded from herbs. In those days, doctors knew quite a lot about plant-based medicines. Pharmacists learned pharmacognosy during their professional education. Over the course of the 20th century, medicinal herbs fell out of favor with most health professionals, but patients are still interested in natural approaches to healing.
To learn more about medicinal herbs, we turn to a leading expert. Mimi Prunella Hernandez is a clinical herbalist and ethnobotanist with a Master of Science in Herbal Medicine. She's a registered herbalist with the American Herbalists Guild and has served as the Guild's executive director for more than 10 years. As a student of ethnobotanist Dr. James Duke, she's been practicing and teaching herbalism for more than 2 decades. Ms. Hernandez lives in the foothills near Asheville, North Carolina, where she stewards and advocates for native medicinal plants on the Ponderland Sanctuary. Her new book is The National Geographic Guide to Medicinal Herbs, the world's most effective healing plants.
Welcome to the People's Pharmacy, Mimi Hernandez.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Mimi, we're looking at your beautiful new book. Congratulations. The photographs are fabulous. Your descriptions are terrific. And, the thing that struck me immediately was that you write about your grandmother who grew up in Mexico and that she was an inspiration for you learning about plants. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your grandmother and her use of herbs for healing.
Sure. My grandmother, or as I call her, my abuelita, lived in Mexico City. And as a child, we would spend a lot of time there, the holidays and in the summers. And she was an herbalist for the neighborhood, what I call a barrio herbalist. And she tended to the children, the grandchildren, the neighbors, the women in the neighborhood. And I was just like a fly on the wall, just on her apron strings, watching her sit down and have tea or hot cocoa with the ladies and talk about their health, what she would call la plática, or the little chit chat, because that's how she always started. Just it was all in the kitchen. She would just sit down and listen and just let's chat about what's going on. And I often followed her to her little courtyard garden where she would pick herbs and say little prayers over them and put them on her altar. Or some medicine making. She would make some tinctures and just give people advice about foods and herbs and tending to folks. And every now and then I'd watch her do actual like healings in person, like lay someone down and do more of a hands-on with the herbs, especially limpias, which translates into cleanse, but really it's just doing like almost like a sacred, cleanse with with a sweep of certain herbs like lemongrass or rue, and she would cleanse the ailments away, if you will.
Well, I admire your opportunity to have interacted with your grandmother. I never got to meet my grandfather. He was a pharmacist at the turn of the 20th century, and a lot of his medicines were derived from plants. We would probably call him a compounding pharmacist today because he used a mortar and pestle to prepare a bunch of herbal products. Now, you have a whole chapter in your book that is titled Apothecary Herbalism. I wonder if you could share some of those treatments from jewelweed and St. John's wort to yarrow and wild black cherry.
Oh, sure. And so the whole point of that chapter is to give people a sense of how herbalists engage with herbs a little bit beyond the kitchen. So, some time honored remedies like wild cherry bark syrup, which is an old time remedy for coughs and lung congestion. And it was a good opportunity for me to describe how syrups are made. We also, I wanted to make sure there was some topical things mentioned in that chapter. So we do talk about things like salves and infused oils and skin spritzers, which there's a short description of the jewelweed skin spritzer because a lot of herbs use it for poison ivy and for rashes and just to cool the skin. Yarrow, is my highlight for talking about flower essences. But we also talk about how to make simple tincture or even just decoctions or herbal infusions. And, a lot of that chapter is just to kind of get the lingo straight so people understand how we're delivering these remedies and applying them in various ways.
Well, we certainly have heard from listeners about using jewelweed against poison ivy. And I think there's probably actually a variety of ways in which people apply this plant to a skin that may have brushed up against poison ivy or poison oak.
Right. And I live in Appalachia in the foothills. And so we have lots of native jewelweed growing here. And I just think it's funny how jewelweed grows really close. It shares habitat with poison ivy. So, sometimes if you find yourself in a patch of poison ivy, that's the first herbal instinct is to go looking for the jewelweed and crush a stem and just start rubbing it onto those places that might have gotten affected before you're able to like get back in your bathroom and really like soak down. But it's anecdotally, it's a treasured remedy for that poison ivy exposure.
Well, you cover 100 herbs in your beautiful herbal, and it is beautiful. We can't talk about all of them, so we're going to ask you about just a few. And I think that one that many people are not at all familiar with is andrographis. What can you tell us about that?
Andrographis is an herb that's native in Asia and has been widely used for millennia. It's something that I like to look at for the very onset of flu or virus. It's very bold. It's very bitter. So eating andrographis or taking a tincture is, quite startling. But fortunately, there's a lot of supplements out there, which include andrographis as part of a kind of quick defense measure when you first get, that inkling of a cold or a flu. And, lots of research is emerging about andrographis in that regard. And I just have found it to be super effective for, nipping it in the bud, like as soon as you feel like you're coming down with something. And I like to blend it with elderberry, which is another herb in the book. And elderberry also, well researched. Elderberry syrup especially for shortening the duration of the common cold and flu. So I think together they make sense. And often you'll find them together in products and in a variety of supplements.
Mimi, I find it so refreshing when you mention things like andrographis or elderberry, because if you go to a standard pharmacy and you look for the most commonly dispensed cough and cold remedies, I mean, they do virtually nothing to help you heal. They may soothe a few symptoms, but they may also be kind of counterproductive, and we won't bore you with the details about the pharmacology. But the idea that there are natural products, herbs, plants that can actually speed healing, actually have an impact on the immune system, I think that comes as a shock to a lot of health professionals.
Oh, absolutely. And I just, I did choose andrographis. In fact, I believe it's the first herb in the book. The book opens right up to a chapter on the herbal sensory experience. And, the lens through which herbalists come to know herbs is through that experience, through their taste and their sensation. And andrographis was like my superstar herb when it comes to the bitter. There's other bitter herbs like gentian and even dandelion root or dandelion greens, as a lot of people know. It's more than just the cold and flu. Just that flavor of bitter really helps our digestion and gets those digestive juices flowing and serves as a digestive tonic. Even just a couple drops on the tongue or a little nibble of a leaf. With the sensory chapter, we also talk about herbs that are spicy or herbs that are aromatic or herbs that feel astringent on the tongue, and just to open people's eyes to look at herbs from that sensory lens, because it really gives us a sense of what they might be good for.
You mentioned spicy, and I know you have written about cayenne. What can you tell us briefly about cayenne?
Oh, I love cayenne, and it has a special place in my family lineage. Cayenne is that spice, that blood mover, a circulatory stimulant, very antiseptic. It just gets all the secretions moving, and it's a great first aid kitchen herb. A lot of people love their spices.
You're listening to Mimi Hernandez, clinical herbalist and ethnobotanist. She's a registered herbalist with the American Herbalists Guild and has served as the Guild's executive director for more than 10 years. She's the author of The National Geographic Guide to Medicinal Herbs, the world's most effective healing plants.
After the break, we may think of goldenrod as a nuisance. Mimi Hernandez describes its benefits.
We'll also learn about some of the many uses for turmeric.
What about hibiscus? Its tangy taste is one of my favorites.
Can prickly pear, also called nopales, help control blood sugar?
We'll also talk with Dr. Tyrone Lodog about using herbs in the practice of medicine.
You're listening to The People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon.
This podcast is made possible in part by Cocovia, maker of the most proven and concentrated flavanol extract in the market today, Coco Pro Cocoa Extract.
March is National Nutrition Month. By now, you may have heard about the heart and brain health benefits of flavanols. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics recommends a daily intake of 400 to 600 milligrams of flavanols from a variety of foods and drinks such as tea, apples, berries, and cocoa to support cardiometabolic health. Yes, you can achieve this guideline through diet, but consider how the convenience of taking a cocoa flavanol supplement like Cocovia can help fill gaps during busiest days.
Get 15% off your Cocovia order from March 7th through March 26th using the discount code NNM, that's NNM 2024 at cocovia.com. Again, N as in Nancy, N as in Nancy, M as in Mary, 2024, NNM 2024.
These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Welcome back to The People's Pharmacy. I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. The People's Pharmacy is made possible in part by Cocovia Dietary Supplements. March is National Nutrition Month. How could Cocovia's cocoflavanols be a part of your nutrition routine? More information at cocovia.com.
Goldenrod is a very pretty fall wildflower, but it has a bad reputation for causing hay fever. Does it have any redeeming qualities?
We're talking with Mimi Hernandez, clinical herbalist and ethnobotanist. She's a registered herbalist with the American Herbalists Guild and has served as the Guild's executive director for more than 10 years. She's going to tell us about goldenrod. Her book is The National Geographic Guide to Medicinal Herbs, the world's most effective healing plants.
Mimi, the book is filled with marvelous photographs and illustrations, and the one I turned to was goldenrod. And I found it so fascinating because, A, it looks so beautiful, but I remember growing up in rural Pennsylvania, and every fall, oh my goodness, hay fever season, goldenrod, allergies. And yet you talk about some of the interesting health benefits of goldenrod. Besides being beautiful, what can it do for us rather than to us?
Well, it's interesting because goldenrod gets that, there's that myth about goldenrod that it causes our hay fevers. And that couldn't be further from the truth because there's other inconspicuous plants that flower around the same year that are responsible for that effect. And so come to find out, goldenrod with those yellow flavonoids are so great for managing hay fevers and for clearing out that, leakiness and snottiness and the weepy eyes. And so I like to take goldenrod, those yellow tops, and make a tea out of them or an infused vinegar and take that, either by the cup of tea or by the spoonful for when those fall allergies are, starting to hit us.
Another herb, I guess we'd call it a spice from the culinary perspective, but it has a huge amount of research associated with it, is turmeric. Please tell us a bit about turmeric.
Turmeric is a traditional root that, comes from the Ayurveda tradition of healing. And the book does highlight Ayurveda as well as other traditional healing practices. But turmeric specifically is just one of the most researched herbs today, especially for anti-inflammatory activity. But it also is highly antiseptic, antiviral. But turmeric is something that a lot of people are finding comfort with, not only for arthritis or joint pain, but also now like mood and depression and, just like viruses like shingles and hepatitis and those kind of concerns.
Mimi, I also want to ask you about another herb. It's called hibiscus, and some of our listeners may be familiar with it. Others probably aren't. But I'm pretty sure your abuelita knew exactly about hibiscus, and she called it Jamaica, and she probably made agua de Jamaica. Am I wrong?
Agua de Jamaica is such a special recipe in my household. And when you travel to Latin America, a lot of families will have their own special recipe for agua de Jamaica, which is that beautiful pink refreshing beverage. And some people like to mix like orange peel in there or a little chamomile, or you'll find a variety of different formulas for it. But it's refreshing. My mom drinks it because she says it helps manage her blood pressure. And I drink it just because I love the flavor and it's such a rich source of those colorful antioxidants.
Well, what's so interesting is that the Jamaica actually does have some pharmacological activity that affects an enzyme. It's angiotensin converting enzyme, and so there is data to support the use of Jamaica
Or
for
hibiscus.
or
Yeah.
hibiscus for hypertension. Now, when we lived in Oaxaca, Mexico, people really loved something called prickly pear cactus nopales. And I have to be honest with you, they're a little slimy for me. But you do talk about prickly pear cactus, nopales, nopalitos, and tell us a little bit about how they're used.
Well, I love prickly pear cactus, probably one of my top five herbs to talk about. So you picked a good one. I actually have a cactus stand here in Western North Carolina. And I think what some people might be surprised about is that the prickly pear cactus is native across America and even into Canada, because we always think about it as, cactus as a desert plant. So here in North Carolina, there's some native stands of it. And the cactus pad is used a lot in Mexican cuisine. And come to find out, it's, really helps people manage their blood sugar when taken with a meal. And in Mexico, they simply do this by having a little side dish of cactus with all their meals. It's a staple, in fact, on the dinner table.
We have encountered it pickled, which Joe likes better than just ordinary cooked nopal.
And we heard from a reader of our newspaper column many years ago. He had a new girlfriend, and his girlfriend actually made him nopalitos. And sure enough, his blood sugar came into better control as long as he consumed those prickly pear cactus leaves with his meals.
That's wonderful. And in the book, I highlight a recipe for a little nopalito slaw. And yeah, it's and some basic instructions on how to work with that cactus pad, because it is an effort to peel off those spines and cut around them and make sure you're working with something that's not going to prickle you.
Now, one other that we'd like to touch on is cacao. And this is a plant. It's the plant that gives us chocolate. It was originally domesticated, I believe, in northern northern South America or Central America. But in any event, it's been growing in Mexico for a very long time. And of course, people around the world love the product, which is chocolate. But tell us about the herbal qualities of cacao.
Sure. And cacao is something that brings me back to my grandmother's kitchen more than anything else, because she was always stirring a pot of cacao with cinnamon. And, even just the aroma of that takes me back. But cacao, especially, it's just so full of antioxidant flavonoids, such a powerhouse. And those are medicine for the blood. They're healing for the blood vessels, those antioxidants, and great for the cardiovascular system, but also that sense of mental clarity that you get. I mean, I think there's a reason we crave chocolate, and it has this somewhat euphoric effect on our mental capacity. And some of us like to think that we can think more clearly, and it's likened to our cup of coffee, but it's not as caffeinated.
Do you have any thoughts, Mimi Hernandez, on how we can recapture the wisdom of past generations, like your grandmother, your abuelita, like Joe's grandfather, and really appreciate the strengths that herbs have to offer us?
I think just really either writing things down or transferring those to future generations, to the children, to the grandchildren. If you're an elder, tell your story. If you're younger, get those stories from your elders in your family, because I believe every family has traditions and a wisdom keeper. You just have to let them know you're interested in those stories so we can pass those along.
Mimi Hernandez, thank you very much for talking with us on the People's Pharmacy today.
This has been fun. Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to Mimi Hernandez, clinical herbalist and ethnobotanist. She's a registered herbalist with the American Herbalists Guild and has served as the Guild's executive director for more than 10 years. She's the author of The National Geographic Guide to Medicinal Herbs, the world's most effective healing plants.
We turn now to Dr. Tarone Lodog. She's a founding member of the American Board of Physician Specialties, American Board of Integrative Medicine, and the Academy of Women's Health. She was elected chair of the U.S. Pharmacopoeia Dietary Supplements Botanicals Expert Committee. Her books include Women's Health in Complementary and Integrative Medicine, Life is Your Best Medicine, and Fortify Your Life, Your Guide to Vitamins, Minerals, and More. Her website is drlodog.com.
Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy, Dr. Tarone Lodog.
Hello, it's so good to be with you.
Oh, it's always wonderful to hear your voice. Tarone, you wrote the foreword to this beautiful book from Mimi Hernandez called Herbal. Please tell us how you initially became interested in herbs. I know that your herbal background precedes your medical research and your medical education.
Yes, I've always been fascinated by the plant world. I guess I'm actually fascinated by the natural world. I'm a naturalist at heart. And plants and trees are all a huge part of that. And when I was very young, my great-grandmother was a midwife, which was, I think, what attracted me to midwifery early in my career. But she used an awful lot of herbs, and my grandmother used an awful lot of herbs. And so growing up, it was common if you had a sore throat, it was natural. She would just put out some sage tea and put it on the sink in the kitchen. And she'd tell you every time you walked through the kitchen to get anywhere, you needed to stop and you needed to swish and gargle and spit it out. And so growing up, I had a belief that everybody knew and used herbs because I just thought everybody knew it from their family. And it was a little shocking to realize that while people were very interested in the plants, many people had not carried that tradition on in their family because let's face it, I mean, Joe, all of our great-grandparents used plants as medicine. They all did. They had little gardens. They would do gathering. Every family, usually the woman, knew a small number of plants to help her family with taking care of all the little things that come up just in our lives and as children. So it was later that when I was studying midwifery and martial arts, that I got very interested in both Eastern and Western herbal medicine in a deeper way. And the rest, I guess, is just history. I as a massage therapist and a midwife and as an herbalist in Las Cruces, New Mexico, I saw lots and lots of people and cared for them with herbs. I started a small little herbal company, Tarone's Herbals. And then when I went to medical school, I brought all that passion for plants with me, and I have spent the last 30 years more formally studying herbal medicines, working at the USP with, evaluating their safety and helping set quality standards for them for products that are sold here in the U.S. And so, I love the plants, and I believe that they play an amazing role in our health. Look at now all the plant forward messages we're getting around eating, right? More fruits, more vegetables, more whole grains. All of these kinds of messages talk to us about the role that plants play in our overall health, and medicinal herbs are a big part of that, in my opinion.
Can you tell us how your background in medicinal herbs has shaped your practice of medicine? Because after all, you do have a medical doctor degree from a standard medical school.
Right. University of New Mexico, wonderful school in Albuquerque. And that was wonderful training for me because it really helped me understand in a deep way what's going on with the body. And the more I learned about our biochemistry and the pathophysiology and just how magical this body is, the deeper my understanding became that a healthy body is actually a body that has its own healing system, that we are designed to be self-healing. Our body is designed to be well if we give it what it needs. And medicinal plants can play such a huge role in helping us to maintain that health. There are so many things that people come in with, I'm tired, I'm not sleeping well, I'm under a lot of stress, I feel kind of anxious. There's, my knee hurts. A lot of things that people I see every day in practice that the conventional answer for is often too much. It blocks entire processes and biochemical pathways in the body. It doesn't work with the body. Now, sometimes you have to block things. I mean, that's clear. But many times for the more chronic problems that we see, lifestyle, which includes the use of medicinal herbs, is a much better approach. And I'll tell you this also, that patients want it. Patients come in and they're like, isn't anything I can do besides taking another medication? And of course, I live in New Mexico, so we have a large indigenous population and a large Hispanic population. And these peoples are just also, is part of their culture that herbs are sort of a first line treatment. But years ago, when I was doing research at UNM, I did a research project at the senior center at the University of New Mexico Hospital, where the elders all came in to get their health care. And I interviewed non-Hispanic white people, Native people, mostly Navajo, and Hispanics. And across the board, it didn't matter who they were, they wanted to know more about herbs, wanted their doctors to know more about herbs, and wanted to use them if they could be safe and if they could help them feel better. So, I love being an integrative doctor, Terry, because I can prescribe a medicine when it's necessary. I can order testing and get the diagnosis. And then I have a whole array of tools that I can use, which includes lifestyle. And part of that lifestyle is certainly the use of herbs.
Dr. Lowdog, in Mimi Hernandez's book that you've written this lovely foreword for, she has 100 herbs from the world's healing traditions. Do you have one, before we go to break, that just stands out for you, an herb that you just couldn't live without, that's just so part of your healing traditions that you could just give us a quick overview for?
Oh my gosh, that's like asking who my favorite child is. And there are a variety of them. I would say that it depends upon the season and the time of year, but I love thyme. And I know that that's one that doesn't sound as exotic and sexy, but thyme, just common garden thyme, I use that so much in my everyday life and in practice because I can use it to heal a wound. I can use it for sore throats. I can use it for cough. It's even still approved for whooping cough in Europe. It's good for digestion. It helps ease gas and bloating. It's good for stimulating bile in the liver and helping with your digestion and your bowel movements. So digestive, respiratory, it has some relaxing effects on the nerves. So if you're feeling kind of tense, and then you can cook with it. So for me, I grow thyme year round and I use it year round and blur the lines of culinary and medicinal basically every day.
You're listening to Dr. Tironi Lowdog, founding member of the American Board of Physician Specialties, American Board of Integrative Medicine, and the Academy of Women's Health. Her books include Fortify Your Life.
After the break, we'll find out when herbal approaches might be more appropriate than pharmaceuticals.
You're listening to The People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon.
This podcast is brought to you in part by Urea Skin Relief from The People's Pharmacy. After years of work, we've gotten the formula just right. We're delighted to be offering this intensive skin therapy with 20% urea.
Urea Skin Relief Cream is not your average moisturizer. Formulated with a unique blend of urea and plant-based ingredients, it's specifically designed to deeply hydrate and soothe even the most stubborn dry skin. Whether you're battling the effects of harsh weather or you have sensitive skin that's prone to irritation, this cream works wonders.
Urea is a powerhouse ingredient. Not only does it act as a humectant, drawing moisture into the skin, it also beefs up the skin's barrier function. We're just as proud of what you won't find in our Urea Skin Relief Cream: no parabens or phthalates. Creating a cream for dry skin free of these common endocrine-disrupting preservatives and plasticizers was what motivated us to make this product.
We're offering a limited time discount for People's Pharmacy podcast listeners. You can get 20% off either the handy 2-ounce size or the hefty 6-ounce size of the People's Pharmacy Urea Skin Relief. You'll find them both in the body care section of the store at peoplespharmacy.com.
Make sure you put the code PP20 into the discount code box when you check out. That's capital P, PP20 for 20% off your Urea Skin Relief purchase through May 31, 2024 at peoplespharmacy.com.
Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Terry Graydon.
And I'm Joe Graydon. The People's Pharmacy is made possible in part by Cocoa Via dietary supplements. March is National Nutrition Month. How could Cocoa Via's cocoa flavanols become part of your nutrition routine? More information at cocovia.com.
Today we're discussing the value of medicinal herbs. Plants like andrographis or rhodiola used to seem exotic. But thanks to our guest, millions of Americans now consider such botanical medicines almost mainstream.
We are talking with Dr. Tirone Lodog. She's a founding member of the American Board of Physician Specialties, American Board of Integrative Medicine, and the Academy of Women's Health. She was elected chair of the U.S. Pharmacopoeia Dietary Supplements Botanicals Expert Committee and was appointed to the Scientific Advisory Council for the National Center for Complementary and Alternative Medicine. Her books include Women's Health in Complementary and Integrative Medicine, Life is Your Best Medicine, and Fortify Your Life, Your Guide to Vitamins, Minerals, and More. Her website is drlowdog.com.
Dr. Lodog, you've pointed out that as an integrative practitioner, you have the option to prescribe a heavy-duty prescription drug or to recommend an herbal. When should people seek out herbal approaches? Are there times that are more appropriate for herbs?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, you want to learn about how you can use common plants and things to help you with, if you're not sleeping well. Obviously, if you've got a chronic sleep problem, make sure you talk to your health provider. You may have sleep apnea or other things, but for a lot of it, it's just hard to sort of wind down at night and you're trying to do all those things and you're just having some difficulty with sleeping. Like for instance, ashwagandha, we have 5 studies now showing that after taking it for about 4 weeks, it definitely improves people's sleep.
I'm going to interrupt you right there because I'll never forget what you told us a couple of years ago. Tired but wired.
Yes. Oh, it's exactly what it is. It's like I'm falling down. I'm so tired. I need to go to sleep. And then I lay down in bed, my eyes pop open and it feels like I got my second wind. Those kind of individuals do great with ashwagandha. And so that, that's a classic example. Minor coughs and colds. I mean, learn what to give your 3 and 4-year-old when they've got the runny nose and the cough and the low grade temperature, because we really don't have a lot of over-the-counter remedies that are safe or effective for little children.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you again because it seems to me, Tirone, that a lot of the things that Western medicine recommends for the quote unquote common cold or the flu, the over the counter medications, first of all, they all contain a fever reducer. Then they have a cough suppressant that probably doesn't work very well, dextromethorphan, and it tastes terrible. And then there's guaifenesin, which is this supposed mucolytic, which again, I don't think works very well.
No.
And then they have decongestants, which may raise your blood pressure, and I don't think do much, if anything, to help you get over a cold or a cough. It seems like all of the over-the-counter stuff is just filled with junk, pardon my language. What would you do if you or someone you loved came down with some kind of an upper respiratory tract infection?
Oh, I mean, I already mentioned thyme. Thyme is a great standby for me. Sage also is excellent. Andrographis, if it's a more significant kind of flu, right, where there's more body aches and things like this. Andrographis, known as the king of bitters. Not only does it have a long reputation across many cultures, it is one of the most widely used plants in the world that people don't even know about. But it has more than 30 different research studies on it showing that it definitely shortens duration and severity of upper respiratory infections and can help reduce your risk of getting a cold. In Thailand, they actually approved the use of andrographis for COVID for individuals who met certain criteria. It meant that they weren't elder, they didn't have a lot of underlying health problems, because andrographis has such strong basic science and clinical research that it can be so beneficial for viral infections. So, for me, fever is not a bad thing. Letting that fever go to 102 degrees and otherwise healthy individuals, younger individuals, is usually a good thing. It just means it's revving up your immune system and your body's trying to fight off what you're fighting with. The more concerning area, and this goes back to what Terry asked earlier about when do you recommend an herbal? Well, I'd be more careful in an elder person, somebody who is 75, years old, who's feeling under the weather, who's not eating, because often they can't mount a fever because they can't mount the fever to really fight the infection. So while you could use an herb there, you would certainly want to do that in partnership with making sure that, you were talking to your doctor or your healthcare partner. But, I would agree with you. I don't use over-the-counter cough and cold things. I like to throw eucalyptus on a washcloth and throw it in the corner of my shower and take a nice steamy eucalyptus shower, to open up my sinuses, and then thyme tea and thyme honey. I in my book Healthy at Home, I gave a recipe for just thyme syrup, and the University of Wisconsin. Think about that. Their family practice, a couple of their doctors were here visiting me at my ranch and said, is it okay that we've made a copy of that and we give that out to patients? Because it works.
Wonderful.
It works so well, and it's inexpensive for many of our people that don't have very much money. And I said, the herbs don't belong to me. You should share whatever, wherever you can. And please use that recipe if it's helping people. But they've been doing that for years that I learned about.
So Dr. Lodog, please share the recipe with us right now.
Of course, all you have to do is, it's better to use fresh if you can, but you can use dried. You take a cup of near boiling water, so turn on the water, boil it, pour that over 1 to 2 tablespoons of fresh thyme or a couple teaspoons of dried. You use more if it's fresh. And then you let that steep for about 10 minutes, strain it, and add about, a quarter cup of honey. So about a fourth of it should be honey, because honey itself is good for cough. And then keep that in the fridge. And basically you take a tablespoon a dose. If you're an adult, you take that frequently. And if it's a child, you use, as long as they're over 1 year of age, they can take a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon, and you can use it as frequent as you can, as you want. It breaks up mucus. It's a mucolytic, a natural mucolytic. It's antibacterial, it's antiviral, and it helps thin the mucus and makes it easier to expectorate, as well as easing sore throats. So I love thyme. And just think about that. Most people have thyme in their kitchen cabinet, so you can use what you have as long as it's not 10 years old. Or you can buy fresh thyme at the grocery store. So it's inexpensive to make. But remember, honey shouldn't be used in children under 1 year of age. But that is a
Right.
remedy that I have used for 40 years. And I've shared it with so many people. And how many people have written to me over the years saying that is the most amazing thing?
It works. Now, you have mentioned that you grow 50 or so medicinal herbs right in your garden. And of course, thyme is easy to grow.
It sure is.
I know because it grows in my garden.
Oh,
But there are people who don't have the space, don't have the know-how to grow medicinal herbs. What do you recommend for them?
Well, I mean, again, looking for reputable suppliers or place that you can purchase from, right? So if you're purchasing products that are already in the marketplace, you should know that, you know, I really discourage people from buying on Amazon if possible. Little tip to the wise, if you are going to purchase on Amazon, make sure you go to the store. So if it's company X and you see it up there and it's like from whatever seller, make sure that you click to go to their store where they're going to ship to you directly. Because we're seeing a lot of problems with botanicals on Amazon, a lot of counterfeit products and a lot of adulteration.
Mm-hmm.
But look, if you shop at Whole Foods, if you go to natural grocers, or you can order your own herbs, like from Mountain Rose Herbs, they're a wonderful company. You can buy bulk and make your own teas and make your own, products. We have a free herbal medicine making course that teaches people how to make that thyme syrup in a basic, simple tincture. And so, I'm committed to helping people to learn to do that. And so we created a little free medicine making course for people to learn the basics. And just think of it like extending your kitchen. Don't think of it as something really complicated. There's a lot of gentle herbs that you can use that are available at the grocery store. Traditional medicinals. I don't usually like mentioning a lot of brands, but this is a wonderful tea company made to the highest standards, and they're sold at grocery stores. And for my patients who are low income, they can use their SNAP to purchase traditional medicinal teas at the grocery store. So,
And SNAP, that's food stamps.
Food stamps, the SNAP program for people that are struggling just with buying groceries. But those teas have things for sore throats and upset tummies and everything else. So just be curious about them.
And the name usually tells you what it might help with, right?
Yes. So like I have right here on my desk right now, I have something called Calm Aid. And that is, I have Cup of Calm. That's what I have this morning. Cup of Calm. And that's just a little chamomile and catnip, little spearmint. And so I love to drink it during the day. It doesn't make me sleepy. It just is a nice, relaxing, non-caffeinated tea. So, but gas relief, ginger, organic ginger, that's another great one to remember. A little note, I had somebody with chronic urticaria that came to see me recently. So she was breaking out in hives constantly. Well, we put her on a low histamine diet, but I recommended she started drinking more ginger because ginger naturally helps with breaking down histamine in the body. And I think it was a combination of both, but she told me that even when she would start to get some of these hives just out of nowhere, she would drink her ginger tea. And not only did she love it, but she said she could watch the splotches on her skin disappear.
Wow. Because the chronic hives can be really frustrating to try to treat.
Oh, and a lot of people aren't thinking of like low histamine diets. Some people may have a genetic predisposition to not being able to make some of the enzymes that break down histamine in the body. And, and this young woman, she was in her 20s and she was just kind of at her wit's ends. And she's doing much better. She's not cured, but she's like 80% better than where she was. And this is another example about how lifestyle and medicinal herbs, how we can bring those in to, helping people. I have somebody recently that, is really struggling with a lot of chronic fatigue and, and has had a lot of thyroid testing and all kinds of testing done. And we started her on rhodiola in the morning. And I told her, I said, this is like a Viking herb. I said, People used to use this to give them energy when they would have to be out in the cold, and, and gave them physical energy and stamina. And, I've seen her now for about 3 months, but she is doing so much better. And she is so in love with that herb. Like, she's put it on her Facebook page. And, this is what I mean. It's like, what do we really have for chronic fatigue in conventional medicine?
Not much.
Not much.
But no.
It goes back to what I think your original question was, is like, where is there, as a conventionally trained doctor who does integrative medicine, I'm board certified in integrative medicine. It's like, there are so many cases where if you have knowledge of how to use these medicinal plants safely and effectively, they can improve the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of the people that you're partnering with. It's amazing.
What I really love about using herbs, Tironi, is that they seem gentler, calmer, less invasive on the body. So, we talked a moment ago about hives, urticaria, and a lot of your colleagues with their medical degrees will prescribe an antihistamine. And there are a couple of antihistamines that are very popular these days, but when people stop taking them, they start itching all over their body, and it can last not just for a few hours, but for a few weeks, and it's unbearable. It sounds like ginger is a lot easier on the system and may accomplish the same benefit for some people.
Exactly. I think one of the principles with herbal medicine that you've just spoken about is that many of our drugs work on a single pathway in the body. And so they work very effectively. They shut it down. The problem is the body is always looking for a way around that because it doesn't like when you completely shut down one of its systems. That's why we see more adverse effects and side effects with many of our drugs. Botanicals, by their very nature of being composed of hundreds of different compounds, they work on multiple pathways in a much more gentle way. They don't completely block things. And so they help with symptom relief. They help with the body's natural healing systems. And they do so often without causing as many adverse effects and side effects. So it's one of the reasons that I love plants for many of the common problems that people have. And if you have a more serious illness or condition, obviously, this is when the heavy hand of Western medicine really comes into play. I mean, and can be so beneficial. I'm so glad we have it. The problem is that if the only thing in your toolbox is a hammer, then every single thing that comes into the office is a nail. And the only thing you know how to do is prescribe a drug. So when I see the 60-year-old person who's on 9 drugs, who's coming in now with GI problems and gut problems and headaches, a lot of this, as you know, Joe, is just the iatrogenic effects of being on 9 different prescription drugs.
Dr. Tironi Lodog, thank you so much for talking with us on the People's Pharmacy today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
You've been listening to Dr. Tironi Lodog. She's a founding member of the American Board of Physician Specialties, American Board of Integrative Medicine, and the Academy of Women's Health. She was elected chair of the U.S. Pharmacopoeia Dietary Supplements Botanicals Expert Committee and was appointed to the Scientific Advisory Council for the National Center for Complementary and Alternative Medicine. Her books include Healthy at Home, Life is Your Best Medicine, and Fortify Your Life. We spoke earlier with Mimi Hernandez, whose new book is The National Geographic Guide to Medicinal Herbs.
Dr. Lodog's website is that's drlodog.com. Lynn Siegel produced today's show. Al Wodarski engineered. Dave Graydon edits our interviews. B.J. Liederman composed our theme music.
This show is a co-production of North Carolina Public Radio, WUNC, with the People's Pharmacy.
The People's Pharmacy is made possible in part by Cocoa Via Dietary Supplements. March is National Nutrition Month. How could Cocoa Via's cocoa flavanols be a part of your nutrition routine? More information at cocovia.com.
Today's show is number 1378. You can find it online at peoplespharmacy.com. That's where you can share your comments about today's interview. You could also reach us through email, radio@peoplespharmacy.com.
Our interviews are available through your favorite podcast provider. You'll find the show on our website on Monday morning.
At peoplespharmacy.com, you could sign up for our free online newsletter. That way, you can get the latest news about important health stories. When you subscribe, you also get regular access to information about our weekly podcast. You can find out ahead of time what topics we'll be covering.
In Durham, North Carolina, I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. Thank you for listening. Please be sure to join us again next week. Thank you for listening to the People's Pharmacy Podcast. It's an honor and a pleasure to bring you our award-winning program week in and week out. But producing and distributing this show as a free podcast takes time and costs money.
If you like what we do and you'd like to help us continue to produce high-quality, independent healthcare journalism, please consider chipping in.
All you have to do is go to peoplespharmacy.com/donate.
Whether it's just one time or a monthly donation, you can be part of the team that makes this show possible. Thank you for your continued loyalty and support. We couldn't make our show without you.